I never imagined the day I'd discover my daughter-in-law's secret would begin with something as ordinary as watering houseplants. Before we begin, a huge thank you to all of you. We've officially hit 500 subscribers. It's a small milestone but a big deal for us. And now our eyes are set on the 1,000 subscribers goal. To help us get there, please hit the like button, subscribe so you never miss a story, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from and how you're doing. Your support truly encourages us and keeps this channel going now. Let's jump into the story. My name is Eleanor, and I was 67 years old when my world quietly cracked open. My son, Mark, and his wife Sabrina were away on a luxury trip overseas. Before leaving, Mark asked me to stop by their house to water the plants. Their home was massive, 3 stories, spotless, cold, and elegant in a way that never felt lived in. Sabrina loved to show it off online, every corner styled like a magazine spread. I never felt comfortable there, but a mother helps when her son asks. After finishing the garden, my knees aching from the stairs, I went into the kitchen to sit down. That's when I noticed a tablet lying on the counter, its screen still lit. I wasn't snooping, at least, not at first. A blinking red notification caught my eye. Saved recording living room 3 days ago. Sabrina had insisted on installing security cameras all over the house. She said it made her feel safe. Curious more than suspicious, I tapped the notification. The video began playing. At first, it was just the living room. Then, Sabrina walked into frame. She wasn't alone. A man followed her inside, young, confident, dressed far too comfortably for someone who didn't belong there. The way she laughed with him wasn't the polite smile she gave at family dinners. It was free, intimate. My hands went cold as I watched him pull her close. Then he kissed her. Not a mistake. Not hesitation. It was familiar, like something they'd done many times before. I wanted to turn the tablet off. I wanted to leave the house and pretend I'd seen nothing. But I stood there, frozen, as the woman my son adored betrayed him on the very couch where we'd shared coffee weeks earlier. And just when I thought nothing could hurt more than what I'd seen, Sabrina sat back, smiled, and started talking. What she said next would change everything. I thought catching her cheating was the worst part. But the words that followed revealed a plan far darker than betrayal. And it was aimed straight at my son. I should have turned the tablet off. I should have put it back on the counter, walked out of the house, and pretended I never saw a thing. But my finger wouldn't move. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Sabrina's voice came through the speakers, clear and calm. "You don't have to worry," she said, brushing her hair back as she sat beside the man. "Mark believes everything I tell him." The man laughed. "Even about the money?" She smiled. "Especially about the money." My knees weakened, and I lowered myself into a chair. Sabrina leaned closer to the camera, completely unaware she was being recorded. "Once the house paperwork is finalized, everything will be in my name too. His mother won't suspect a thing. She's old-fashioned, predictable. Old-fashioned, predictable." I felt that word sink into my chest like a stone. The man asked, "What about her? Doesn't she ask questions?" Sabrina waved her hand dismissively. "She thinks I adore her. I make her tea, compliment her cooking. That's all it takes." They both laughed. I pressed my hand over my mouth to keep from making a sound. My son trusted this woman with his life, with his future, and here she was, planning it like a business deal with someone else. The video ended, and the screen went dark. I sat there for a long time, staring at my reflection in the black glass. I felt sick, angry, but more than anything, I felt terrified. Mark was gentle, too trusting. He loved deeply and believed people meant what they said. After his father died, I'd tried to teach him to be careful with his heart. But I never imagined I'd need to protect him from his own wife. I stood up slowly and placed the tablet back exactly where I'd found it. Then I did something I'd never done before. I took out my phone and started taking notes. Dates, words, details, everything I could remember from the video. I knew one thing for certain: I couldn't confront Sabrina without proof. And I couldn't tell Mark until I understood the full picture. Before leaving, I glanced around the house one last time. It didn't look like a home anymore. It looked like a stage. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard Sabrina's laugh echoing in my head. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a message from Mark. "Mom, can you come over tonight? Sabrina wants to cook dinner for you." I stared at the screen, my hands trembling. She wanted to sit across from me, smile at me, serve me food, and pretend nothing was wrong. I typed back one word: of course. That dinner invitation wasn't kindness, it was a test. And I was about to walk straight into it. I arrived at Mark and Sabrina's house just before sunset. The lights were on, the curtains open, everything staged to look warm and welcoming. From the outside, it looked like a perfect home. From the inside, I knew better now. Sabrina opened the door with a wide smile. "Eleanor, you made it." She hugged me tightly, the kind of hug meant for an audience. Her perfume was sweet and overwhelming. "Come in," she said cheerfully. "Dinner's almost ready." Mark appeared from the living room, grinning like a boy. "Hey Mom, you look tired. Everything okay?" "I'm fine," I said. And for once, that wasn't entirely a lie. I wasn't fine, but I was focused. The table was set beautifully. Candles, cloth napkins, wine already poured. Sabrina moved around the kitchen like a hostess performing a role she'd practiced many times. As we ate, she asked me harmless questions. How was my garden? Was my knee still bothering me? Did I ever think about moving closer to them? I answered carefully, watching her more than listening. Every laugh felt rehearsed. Every glance at Mark felt calculated. Halfway through dinner, she reached across the table and touched my hand. "I'm so grateful to have you in my life," she said warmly. "Not everyone is lucky enough to have a mother-in-law. Who cares?" I nearly choked on my food. Mark smiled. "See, Mom, I told you, she appreciates you." I forced a smile. That means a lot. But my mind replayed her voice from the video, cold, dismissive, mocking. After dessert, Mark excused himself to take a work call. The moment he left the room, the air changed. Sabrina leaned back in her chair and studied me. "You've been quiet tonight." "Just tired," I said. She tilted her head. "You were at the house earlier this week, right? Watering the plants." "Yes," I replied evenly. "Everything okay there?" she asked, her eyes sharp now. "Everything looked normal," I said. Her lips curved into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Good. I'd hate for there to be any misunderstandings." There it was. A warning wrapped in politeness. Mark returned moments later, oblivious. The rest of the evening passed without incident, but my nerves were raw by the time I left. As I stepped outside, Sabrina followed me to the door. "We should do this more often," she said softly. "Family is important." I nodded and walked away. But as I reached my car, I realized something chilling. That dinner hadn't been about kindness. It had been about control. And now that Sabrina suspected I might know something, she wouldn't stay calm for long. Because the very next day, I discovered she was already making moves, ones that could cost my son everything. The next morning, I woke with a tight feeling in my chest. Dinner replayed in my mind over and over: Sabrina's smile, her carefully chosen words, the way her eyes sharpened when she asked about the house. She knew something had changed. Maybe not what I knew, but enough to make her uneasy. That afternoon, I decided to do something I should have done months earlier. I went to the bank. The teller greeted me politely, recognizing me from years of visits. "How can I help you today, Mrs. Hayes?" "I'd like copies of the recent transfers from my son's joint account," I said. She hesitated. "Do you have authorization?" "I'm listed as an emergency contact," I replied calmly, and I helped open the account. After a brief pause, she nodded and printed the records. What I saw made my stomach drop. Large withdrawals, frequent transfers, accounts I didn't recognize. Most of the money had moved within the last 3 months right after. Sabrina quit her job, claiming stress. I drove home slowly, gripping the steering wheel. At home, I spread the papers across my kitchen table and compared dates. Transfers lined up perfectly with the luxury purchases. Sabrina loved to show online weekend trips, designer bags, renovations Mark never mentioned. That's when I noticed something else. A transfer scheduled for the following week. A very large one. I called Mark immediately. He answered cheerfully. "Hey Mom, what's up?" "Mark," I said gently, "have you made any large transfers recently?" There was a pause. "No, why?" My heart sank. "I think you should check your account," I said carefully. Another pause. Longer this time. Then his voice changed. "That money, Sabrina said it was for taxes. She handles all that." I closed my eyes. "Mark," I said softly, "please listen to me. I think you need to talk to a professional, a financial advisor today." He laughed nervously. "You're worrying too much." "I hope you're right," I replied. That evening, I received a message from an unknown number. "You should stop digging." No name, no explanation. Just that. My hands trembled as I stared at the screen. A minute later, another message came through. "Some things are better left alone." I knew then that this wasn't just about betrayal anymore. It was about exposure. And Sabrina knew I was getting closer. I deleted the messages but not before taking screenshots. That night, I locked my doors for the first time in years, because whatever game Sabrina was playing, she wasn't finished yet. And by the end of the week, Mark would uncover a truth so devastating, it would force all of us to choose sides. Mark didn't call me back that night. That alone worried me more than the bank records or the messages. Mark was never the type to ignore me. Even as an adult, he always returned my calls, sometimes just to say he was busy. The next morning, I drove to his house unannounced. Sabrina's car wasn't in the driveway. That gave me a small sense of relief. I knocked, then knocked again. Finally, Mark opened the door. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes. His shirt wrinkled like he'd slept in it. "Mom," he said, "what are you doing here?" "We need to talk," I replied gently. "May I come in?" He stepped aside. The house felt different, quiet, heavy. No music. No cheerful greeting from Sabrina. Mark sat on the couch and rubbed his face with both hands. "I checked the account," he said before I could speak. "You were right." My chest tightened. "She moved money without telling me," he continued. "She said it was temporary, that she was just organizing things. And do you believe that?" I asked softly. He hesitated. "I want to." "That hurts, but I understood it. I didn't marry her thinking she'd hurt me," he said. "I thought she loved me." "I know," I replied. "That's why this is hard." He leaned forward. "There's more." I stayed silent. "She's been pushing me to sell the house," he admitted. "Said we should downsize and invest. She already contacted an agent." My heart dropped. "Mark," I said slowly, "did you agree to that?" "No," he said quickly. "But she keeps bringing it up. Says I don't trust her." I reached across the table and took his hand. "Trust doesn't mean handing over control." Before he could respond, the front door opened. Sabrina walked in. She froze when she saw me. "Oh," she said coolly. "I didn't realize you'd be here." "I stopped by to check on my son," I replied. She smiled thinly. "How thoughtful." Mark stood up. "Sabrina, we need to talk. About the money." Her expression hardened instantly. "Not in front of her. She's already involved," he said, "because this affects my future." Sabrina laughed sharply. "Or because she wants to interfere." I stood. "I want the truth." Sabrina's eyes flashed. "Be careful," she said. You don't know what you're accusing me of. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at it and for a brief second, fear crossed her face. Then she looked at Mark. We'll finish this later. She walked out, slamming the door behind her. Mark sank back onto the couch. I think she's hiding something big, he whispered. I nodded slowly, because I was sure of it. And within days, the secret Sabrina was protecting would begin to surface whether she was ready or not. Sabrina didn't come home that night. Mark tried calling her again and again, pacing the living room while his phone rang unanswered. Each missed call tightened the knot in my chest. By midnight, he stopped trying and sat in silence, staring at the dark window like he was waiting for an answer to appear there. She's done this before, he said quietly. When she's angry. I didn't respond. Disappearing was a tactic one meant to punish. The next morning, Mark finally received a message. I need space. Stop listening to your mother. That was all it said. Mark read it twice, then handed me the phone. His hands were shaking. Why does it feel like I'm choosing between my wife and my own mother? Because she wants it to feel that way, I replied gently. Later that day, Mark met with a financial advisor. When he returned, his face was pale. She opened a credit line in my name, he said, without telling me, and there's more money missing than we thought. I closed my eyes slowly. The advisor had warned him that if things continued, he could be legally responsible for debts he didn't even know existed. Hearing that broke something in him. That evening, Sabrina finally came back. She walked in like nothing had happened, dropped her purse on the counter, and poured herself a glass of water. Are we done with the drama now? Mark stood. Why did you open credit in my name? Her eyes narrowed. Because I'm your wife. That's not an answer, he said. She scoffed. You're acting paranoid. Ever since she glanced at me, started filling your head. I stepped forward. This isn't about me. It's about honesty. Sabrina laughed bitterly. You wouldn't understand. You've never wanted more. The words hung in the air. Mark's voice broke. Did you ever love me? For a moment, she said nothing. Then her phone buzzed again. She looked at the screen and this time, she didn't hide her fear. I'm going out, she snapped. We'll talk when you calm down. She rushed past us and slammed the door. Minutes later, Mark's phone rang. It was the bank. They were calling about a transaction Mark hadn't approved. One scheduled for the very next day. A transaction big enough to change everything. Mark sank into a chair, staring at the floor. I don't even know who she is anymore, he whispered. I placed my hand on his shoulder. Neither did I. Because the next morning, that transaction would force Sabrina to reveal just how far she was willing to go. The next morning, Mark didn't go to work. Instead, he sat at the kitchen table. Laptop open, bank statements spread out like evidence in a courtroom. He hadn't slept. Neither had I. The house felt tense, as if it were holding its breath. At exactly 9 o'clock, Mark's phone rang. He put it on speaker. The bank representative spoke carefully, explaining that the scheduled transaction had been flagged due to unusual activity. Because of that, it hadn't gone through yet. They needed confirmation. Mark swallowed hard. Cancel it, he said. Immediately. There was a pause. Then, done, the voice replied. Mark closed his eyes. A few minutes later, the front door flew open. Sabrina stormed in, her face flushed, her movements sharp and frantic. What did you do? She demanded. Mark stood. I stopped the transfer. Her composure cracked. You had no right. It was my money, he said. My name. She laughed bitterly. Everything I did was for us. For us? Mark repeated. You lied. You took money. You opened credit in my name. Sabrina's eyes darted toward me. This is her fault? I didn't speak. Mark shook his head slowly. No, this is yours. For a moment, she looked like she might cry. Then her expression hardened. You think you're so innocent? You let her control you. I asked for honesty, he said. That's not control. Sabrina grabbed her bag. If you choose her, don't expect me to stay. Mark's voice was calm but firm. I'm choosing the truth. That stopped her. She stared at him. Realizing something had shifted in, she could no longer steer it. Without another word, she turned and left. Hours passed in silence. By evening, Mark finally spoke. I don't think she's coming back. I nodded, and if she does, it won't be the same. That night, Mark received an email from a lawyer he didn't recognize. It referenced shared assets, possible claims, and documentation. Mark read it twice. She's preparing something, he said quietly. I felt a chill run through me. This wasn't over, not even close. Because when someone loses control, they don't always walk away. Sometimes, they fight back. And Sabrina had never been the type to lose gracefully. What Sabrina would do next wouldn't just threaten Mark's future, it would put our entire family on the line. Sabrina filed the papers 2 weeks later. Not to apologize, not to explain. To protect herself, Mark read the documents in silence, his jaw tight, his eyes tired. The lawyer confirmed what we already suspected: Sabrina had been moving assets, preparing an exit long before any confrontation happened. The truth hurt, but clarity came with it. Because once the paperwork was filed, the games stopped. Mark closed the joint accounts immediately. Credit lines were frozen. Passwords were changed. For the first time in months, he took control of his own life. Sabrina tried calling. At first, it was angry voicemails, accusations, blame. Then, the tone changed, wrapped in excuses, promises that everything could still be fixed. Mark didn't answer. One afternoon, he sat across from me at the kitchen table and said, I kept hoping she'd choose me over whatever she was chasing. I reached for his hand. You can't compete with someone's ambition when it has no limits. The legal process was slow, but fair. Because of the records, we kept the bank statements, messages, dates. Sabrina's claims fell apart quickly. What she'd taken, she was forced to return. The house stayed with Mark. More importantly, his peace did too. Weeks later, Mark began to smile again. Not the forced kind, the real one. He cooked, he slept. He laughed at things that used to pass him by. One evening, as we watered the plants together, the same simple task that had started everything, he said, if you hadn't come over that day. I shook my head. You would have found out eventually. But we both knew the truth. Sometimes, protection comes quietly. Not in arguments or warnings, but in noticing what others ignore. I never wanted to be right. I just wanted my son safe. And now, he was. As for Sabrina, she disappeared from our lives as quickly as she'd entered it. No dramatic farewell. No final confrontation. Just absence. And sometimes, that's the loudest ending of all. The scariest betrayals aren't the ones that shout, they're the ones that smile, sit at your table, and wait for you to look away. If this story touched your heart, tell me in the comments, what city are you watching from? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story so more people remember. No matter how old you are, it's never too late to stand up for yourself.